I took in a hitchhiker that turned out to be crazy. As in legit crazy. I won't ever do that anymore, and hopefully, my experience will discourage you to do too. I live in a foreign country, and I don't know about your country's sanitary measures against the epidemic, but at the time, we were no longer confined. It happened in September of this year. I was driving from my parents' house to a friend's apartment near our college campus. It was an hour-and-a-half drive to there. We had plans to spend the week together after not seeing each other for months. Even though the incident is not related to my friends in any way, it just hit me how dangerous it actually was when I started telling them what had happened. I remember one of them saying, "This must have been the worst 45-minute drive of my life." I laughed at it back then, but it hits me now how true it was. I left quite late that day, around 9 p.m. because I remember the sun had already set and I was going to arrive late, which I didn't like. But I was used to the road as I had often taken it. For some context, it was an hour-and-a-half drive, and I would usually stop midway in a McDonald's parking lot to smoke a cigarette before carrying on. This is important for later in the story. I saw the hitchhiker not long after I had left my parents' house. I had driven for about 10 or 15 minutes when I saw him at the exit of a roundabout. It was a tall, slender guy with one of those tiny shoulder bag guys that they wear across their chest. I thought it was a guy in his 20s that had just been dropped by his friends on his way back from a party or something. Which was stupid because it was still way too early for a party to end. But that's the first thought that I had, and I immediately felt sympathy, and I stopped. I opened the passenger window and asked where he was going. I realized right away that he was way older than I thought, at least in his 30s. He had a really pale face, and the way he looked at me honestly freaked me out. The guy was going in my direction, to the town where I would be stopping midway to take a break. I don't know what I was thinking, to be honest, but I just responded automatically that it was on my way and that he opened the door. And I had the worst next 45 minutes of my life. I don't mean to be dramatic, but it really went to hell. I knew right away that I had made a mistake as I drove off, because as soon as I had started driving, he started holding on to his stomach tightly, crouching himself in the passenger seat and going back and forth saying that he wasn't feeling good. I offered to open the windows for some fresh air. He said that he just had to take his medication, which he never did. Saying that I felt uncomfortable is an understatement. I remember thinking that I had screwed up, and whatever happened, I should not stop under any circumstances. The first thing I did was ask him if he would be okay if I dropped him off at that city's McDonald's. It had a lit parking lot, and there were always people there until midnight, so I could leave immediately onto a fast road. I think he agreed, but either way, it didn't matter because I wasn't planning on stopping elsewhere. I was already freaked out. Thought that I had pretended to focus on the road and tried to appear as calm as I could. And he kept talking during this whole time. I don't remember in what order it happened exactly, but I remember he asked me if he could look at my nails. I had no nail polish, to which I responded I was driving. He apologized and said that I shouldn't worry because he had never done anything bad to anyone before. He told me that his girlfriend was mad at him, wanted to break up with him if he didn't come back. He asked where I was going, what I was planning on doing tonight, if I was planning to have a long, hot bath, if I had a boyfriend, how we liked to do it. I said that all of that was private and that I didn't want to answer it. He nodded and said that he was young once too, until he got arrested. This is not a typo. Young until arrested were his words. He insisted twice that we were followed by cars. Asked me if I smoked. I said no. He offered me a cigarette. I said it was nice, but he didn't have to. He left a cigarette on the board. He took out his phone at one point and wanted to show me a picture of him and a picture of his mom, saying that she was beautiful. I took a quick glimpse and the freaking thing was broken. Like it had multiple straight black lines of broken pixels, and it was reddish on the left and yellowish on the right, which made the picture really creepy. He got mad at that point because I was just taking a quick glimpse, and he started talking louder, saying that I didn't give a crap about what he was saying. I straight up said, "I'm listening, but I can't watch. I'm driving." He calmed down immediately, said he was sorry, and that he wanted to show me another picture. He asked if it was my car, and I said that it was my parents'. Somehow, I didn't want him to think that I was rich or had any kind of money. I'm just a poor, old, in-debt student. Leave me alone. I lied, saying that I had hit a deer last week, which is a lie. My mom had, but that memory came in handy. And I was trying to focus and pay attention because I didn't want to break my parents' car. I had hoped that he would shut up, but he didn't. At some point, he was just straight up staring at me, and he muttered, "Poor thing." He then straightened up and pointed to a road sign in panic, saying, "I meant the road sign. Poor road sign." Honestly, I think at that point I was thinking if he ever tried anything, I would crash this car and both of us into a tree, because if I couldn't make it out, neither would he. I'm ashamed to say this, but I didn't want him to get out of this so easily. He screamed his name was Archangel Michael. He asked my name and I gave him a fake one. Said something like, "Michael, right?" And he crouched himself again in panic, going back and forth, saying that I shouldn't know his name. I said okay, to be honest, that was the only thing that I would say in the end. When we came to the city where he had to stop, he asked if I could take him to the train station. It was almost 10 p.m. and I knew no trains were running. No lights and surely no other cars or human presence. I told him that we had said he would stop at McDonald's. He nodded. "Oh, yeah. He said that I was nice. Put a coin on the board next to the cigarette. I stopped on the parking lot and I did not park. Just stopped there right in the middle of the way where I felt I was the most exposed. He just left saying, "See you later," and I drove away very fast. I never saw or heard from him again. This is a story about a man named John that I met while working in retail. John is an older white man in his mid-50s, well-dressed, well-spoken, shoulder length, steel gray hair and a low ponytail tied back. At the time, I was working at a farm and a pet supply store. I was called over to help a customer look at electric fences and shock collars for dogs, which I am against, but I had to help the customer. I asked him what I could help him with, and he said that he was interested in an electric fence for his dogs, since he had a cabin in the woods and wanted to make sure that they didn't get away. He said, "Oh yes, I'm looking to use this shock collar, maybe on you." Thoroughly creeped out, I tried to laugh it off and tell him, "Oh, no thank you." I finally got him someone who knew more than I did, and thought that that would be the end of it. Of course it wasn't. The next time he saw me, he said, "I've been looking for you. I bought what I wanted. I didn't know what you said. I want to slap you the next time that I saw you." I told him that if he ever hits me, I would absolutely hit him back. So then, a few days later, he told me he would really like to take me out to lunch one day. I politely declined. He would come into the store and look for me. I'd see him before he saw me. But one day, I saw him first. I hid until I thought he had left, but no. He found me back in my department. He said, "Just so you know, I'm not dressed up for you today. I have a meeting with the bank, but if I didn't, I would be taking you out to lunch. You know, I can tell you dyed your hair. You look so beautiful, but that doesn't mean anything to you, does it? I might mean something if you liked me back. He was never banned from the store, even after one of my managers heard him say these things to me. But my coworkers would tell me when he was in the store and tell me get away from him until he left. I haven't seen him since I quit, and I am so thankful. When I was 18, I was living in a small town. I was friends with the ratty skaters around, and they helped connect with this dude who sold weed. He was 29, I think, at the time, and gave me pretty good deals and lived nearby. I wasn't driving at the time, so this was convenient for me. His name was Max. Max had always struck me as a weird dude, but I honestly quite liked his weirdness. Not in a romantic way or anything, but I like weird people. We had normal weed buying interactions that never lasted more than 10 minutes. Buy some weed and maybe smoke a bowl and that's it. He would often tell me that he could drop it off at my house, but I never let him because, as I said before, he was weird. I wasn't afraid of him, but was definitely aware that he and his offers to deliver were weird. One day in May 2018, I was invited to a bonfire by the same ratty skaters that had introduced me to this guy. I had no idea that he would be there, nor was it important to me at all. I brought the guy that I was dating at the time. I said hey to everyone, including Max. We stayed for a couple of hours, and some of them played some music on their guitars. Nearing the time that I was leaving the bonfire around 11 p.m., Max was getting upset about something and threw his guitar to the bonfire. I didn't know what he was angry or upset about and paid no mind to it. This happened as I was leaving with the guy that I was dating. I went to bed and woke up to paragraphs on paragraphs of crazy text messages from Max, ranging from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. Like a constant stream of text, stating things such as, "You know how much I loved you. You are cruel." He would go back and forth between saying, "I would give you the world if you let me," and "You really do deserve him though." He said really scary things like, "You're an awful person and you should be snubbed out. Just wait, winky face." And "You are stuck. I will either love you or hate you to the fullest extent that my powers behold. Right now I pay you the worst death on you and your boyfriend." And to top it all off, he said, "Losing you is like losing a mother to me." And he told me to tell him that I never loved him and that I wouldn't hear from him again if I did. So that's what I did. I said that I never loved you and do not message me again. And I left it at that. I didn't get a response, nor did I care to get one. Max had never expressed any romantic interest, asked me out or anything. This was all out of nowhere, and he was 11 years older than me. I was barely 18. That night, he cut his long hair off and posted photos naked on Facebook, curled up in a fetal position, talking about being a statue of shame. It's as if he had had a breakdown, but I had no intention of causing that, and I didn't think that I would even offend anyone by bringing the guy that I was seeing. Everyone else seemed to like the guy that I brought. About a week later, Max texted me pretty late at night and asked if I had seen the flowers that he spread along my sidewalk, saying that he stole every flower in the vicinity of my neighborhood that night. I asked how he knew where I lived, and he said that I hadn't seen the flowers, so he must have had the wrong house. I also told him that he shouldn't do that, as I never felt anything for him and so on. He told me that he had heard I lived on the same block as another one of these skater guys we were both friends with, and he wasn't wrong. The skater guy that I lived by was on the other side of the block, and I never walked that way, so I never saw the flowers. I blocked his number and didn't hear from him again for weeks. Weeks later, I woke up after a rough night and there were loads of flowers on the sidewalk right outside of my house, along with a little bouquet at the top of my walkway. I was pissed. I wasn't scared yet, and stupidly, I unblocked his number and texted him asking why the heck there were flowers outside of my house. This confirmed that this indeed was where I lived. I still to this day feel so stupid for texting him and making it known that after weeks he had found my house. He responded saying, it sounds nice. 'Twas me. I yelled at him, basically, and I blocked his number again. About a week later, I was out of town and my roommate texted me a photo of a heart with a peace sign inside of it, and my name written under it drawn in chalk outside of our house. When I got back into town, I went to the courthouse and began the process of getting a restraining order against him. And when I left the courthouse, I went to Max's work and told him he needed to stop this behavior, and that he was stalking me. He looked me in the eyes with no facial expression and said, "If you don't leave, I'm calling the cops." I got angry and said loudly, "Call the cops. I was just talking to them about you," and left his work in a rage. Soon after this, I began driving again. I once drove by him and he noticed that it was me. The next day, I woke up with my car covered in flowers. I presented my case to the judge and she put the stalking order in place. He was served with it by police officers and I thought that that was it, and that he wouldn't be bothering me again. I was wrong. After the stalking order was served, he made several other chalk messages on my sidewalk, left random gifts for me like chalk, and beheaded My Little Pony heads on beer bottles. I always brought these things to the police station, but they said that I needed to catch him doing it, to take a photo or get a security camera. So I got a security camera and really hoped that I would catch him. It turned out that my camera was stupid and I couldn't just watch the videos that it took, but I had to skip through second by second by hand. It was an impossible task. I was terrified of leaving my house at night at this point. I never had my curtains open anymore and I was so frustrated that my livelihood was being taken away from me. Ultimately, I blocked his number in hopes that he would text me directly violating the stalking order, and after a few days it did work. He sent me a weird text saying something like, "Forgive me, we are charming and this is harming, let's try again." By now it's September 2018 and he finally goes to jail. He's facing up to a year in jail and has to stay there until their court date. I finally start calming down and I'm able to go outside at night, even if it's just to get in my car. I let myself have my curtains open sometimes. I'm starting to feel alive again. Right when I start feeling more secure in my small town life again, someone posted bail and he was released after only 3 months in jail, and I went back to living in fear. We still had court dates coming up and I was optimistic that he would serve more time for ruining my life for so long. His lawyer kept pushing the court date back to gather evidence, and after about 6 months of pushing it back, the state decided he wouldn't do anything more and he closed the case basically. I had moved out of town 3+ hours away at this point, so he didn't actually have an option to continue this behavior. Living in this new place, I feel safe. I can walk at night and don't have to have my curtains closed all the time. It's been over a year since they decided to close the case. About a month ago, he began responding to my friends' Instagram stories, friends that live here in this new town, telling them how fond he is of me and so on. I've always had him blocked, but my Instagram isn't private, so he must have found them out that way. I have since changed my account to private and he hasn't messaged any more friends of mine. I refuse to be fearful now, the way that I was then. He will never find where I live or where I work now. However, my life is forever changed after this experience. I will always be more aware of people and their weird energy. I will always close my curtains early in the evening and make sure that all my windows and doors are locked. I will always live a little bit in fear, maybe not of him, but of it happening again. He ruined my life for a year and I truly wish that he had gotten that time in jail. He deserves it.